Welcome to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Of course, I'm your host, JJ Kitchen, and for another great show here tonight, guys, and plenty of different topics. It's certainly been a crazy couple days. Obviously, we had a great holiday. It was really cool to let you guys go out and do your business. We certainly had an off day on the Sunday conversation. Yesterday, we have a storm. We can't get the show going, but we're here today, and plenty of different topics here to talk about from numerous different angles that we've seen in the last couple days. Big 12 Media Days kick off today. A crazy poll from The Athletic in terms of top 25 rivalries in college football. The Backyard Brawl is not on there. We'll talk about that tonight. Well, I think it should be on there. Ohio State versus Penn State makes the list, and it's in the top 10. But Ohio State is not rivals with Penn State, which is a pretty crazy game to have on there for a game in the top 25, let alone the top 10, which was pretty crazy to watch. Pitt loses a commitment. An offensive lineman, Dejon Moore, we'll talk about tonight why Pitt's still in great shape in terms of the class. This was pretty much, I think we knew Pitt was not going to hold on to every single commitment. Every school around the country is going through the same exact thing. Potential players on the board that could be taken care of, but Pitt still has 20 commitments. I expect them to have more than just one more commitment. I think up to at least 4 more commitments between the offensive line, the defensive line. I think there's still a number of different players they could certainly look at. Also, too, how many teams and the ACC teams could compete for an ACC title this year? We'll talk about that. Also, the Acrisure Stadium atmosphere. A couple comments came to me through direct messages asking, to talk about the ACC, to talk about the Acrisure Stadium atmosphere, fans not wanting to stand up or sit down and people getting upset about that. We'll talk about what Pitt could do potentially with the atmosphere at Acrisure Stadium. Also, naming rights. We've talked about a little bit before with Harry Paceras on the show. Naming rights are coming to the University of Pittsburgh when it comes to the new Victory Heights project, but also the Peterson Events Center will certainly be named something new because of the millions of dollars that are currently in effect for that. Also, premium seating was recently announced by Alan Green and the Pitt Athletic Department, and the millions of dollars that's going to raise. We'll talk about that. Obviously, open Q&A. We'll certainly have that on here as well to answer your questions here live. But also, ACC Media Days are just 2 weeks away. Some of the headlines as we go into it and the ACC teams we have on the docket. But first off, you guys know the show is sponsored by Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA 15102. Tremendous people. Alan and Bill, 2 great individuals, Pitt season ticket holders, Pitt Athletic Director funds, donators, but also Alliance 412 members as well. Make sure you go into Colonial Beer. They have many different selections in there. The Pitt beer that they have there with Icy Light, the great collaboration is there, but also your heavier beers or lighter lagers, which is in there over the weekend, was able to really stock up. Colonial Beer released out on X. You guys have done a phenomenal job. It was the best weekend they've had so far while they've been in business. You guys have certainly made an impact on them and just could not truly appreciate it enough and everything that you guys have done to make Colonial Beer your one-stop shop when it comes to preparing for your tailgates, your parties, your 4th of July celebrations. Cannot thank you guys enough for what you do to support a great place like Colonial Beer and great people. Make sure you go and stop there today, and make sure you go get your beer or whatever you need for your parties. Again, Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA 15102. Because right now, guys, we are less than a month away from August camp. August camp and fall camp are certainly on the way. Get ready with that with Colonial Beer. The show is also sponsored by Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson, an attorney on your side. Call them at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. Again, you guys have gotten to meet Brian Thompson at the spring game during last season. A tremendous individual, easy person to talk to, easy person to get a hold of. He's a guy that will guide you through the process from beginning to end to make sure you get all of your answers and all of your questions answered when you have your issues or any type of debt you're currently in. Make sure, again, Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson. Call them at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. Last but not least, the show is sponsored by The K Collection, the coffee brand by Austin Kitchen at www.thekingscraft.com. Cool design, cool bag he has here. Me personally, I've never been much of a coffee person, so Austin really got me involved with the K Collection, his coffee brand. Personally, me, the AK Espresso, as you can see here, is really the one that I go to the most because it's one, all I need is one cup in the morning. It gets me going. If it can certainly promote and get somebody like Austin Kitchen, again, my younger brother who's in the Seattle Mariners organization, if it can get a professional baseball player get going for their day, can certainly help out me and you. Again, a great, really cool design, the K Collection. Make sure you go to www.thekingscraft.com and get yours today. Austin Kitchen, a Mount Lebanon baseball alum, Coastal Carolina national champion at the University of Coastal Carolina for baseball, and also now in professional baseball. Again, the K Collection coffee brand by Austin Kitchen, www.thekingscraft.com. The comments are coming in. Adam, as always, in here first. Do you think Pitt is settled with the current class? We'll talk about that here tonight. I do not think they're settled. Actually, I know they're not settled. They're looking at a number of different positions. They will go after more offensive linemen that we've talked about. They lost Dejon Moore, who personally I think was a great offensive lineman commit. Things get in the way in terms of money and what that looks like. Dejon Moore was out of Willis, Texas. I still think that's not out of the realm yet of Pitt potentially getting him back. But Pitt has some other guys on the docket. The number one rated offensive line recruit for Pitt is actually Nicholas Howard, also out of Texas. He's still committed to Pitt from everything I've been talking to and reached out to him. He's still 100% committed to Pitt. But like anything else we've seen in this realm of NIL and college football, they're not committed until there's a signed letter of intent when it comes to December and the end of December. So we'll continue to watch that. But they are not done. They're still looking at the defensive line, offensive line, potentially cornerback. And there's a couple wide receivers still on the board that they're still looking at as well. So they're certainly going to take a little bit more. Right now, there are 20 commitments. I think they're going to get it to at least 24 commitments. So we potentially still have 4 more commitments out there. And if they want to, they can still go into the transfer portal, which I truly still expect Pitt to take care of the transfer portal and going in there to fill their needs whenever they need to. But we'll go into that. Pitt fan, hail to Pitt. What's up, JJ? Hail to Pitt. Smash the like button and subscribe and join Alliance 412. Couldn't agree more. If you're down here below, if you're over on X, as I've seen here before, we're streaming in 3 different areas between X, YouTube, and Facebook. If you're over on X, head over to YouTube, subscribe to the channel. It's free. Subscribe, like the video, and make sure you share it with your friends. If you want to get your question up on the screen here tonight, make sure you use the super chat button down below and we'll get you up on the screen. Again, we're streaming in 3 different places, X, YouTube, and Facebook here tonight. If you're over on Facebook, make sure you hit the like button and follow Talking College Football on Facebook. Okay, first up, Pitt loses a commitment. We've talked about this. Obviously, it comes out on July 4th. People were really upset about it. It's the realm of college football. I think the things I want to tell Pitt fans is, it's happening to every university around the country. I mean, this is kind of what we're going through on a day in, day out basis. NIL, the transfer portal, decommitments, commitments. We've seen it across the board from top to bottom. They still have 20 commitments. They're currently sitting at 29th in the country with 247. Potentially could drop or add more since they're going to be adding at least 4 more commitments. I would think they'll probably jump up even more. They'll certainly have the players to do so. There's a number of players on that board that I see that are currently 3-star commitments that are not unanimous 4-star commitments that could jump up between 247 rivals and on 3. A number of those players will continue to watch and see what they look like. But at the end of the day, guys, commitments are going to come and go. But I think that Pitt's done a really good job at this point that we're out of June, we're into July. They've only lost 1 player. While I think Dejon Moore is a really good offensive line, I think he's a great player. Maryland's getting a good guy. There's still plenty of ways to go till December. I think Pitt right now is in babysit mode in terms of all the 20 other commitments that they have. And the majority of them, I really do. I would say 90 to 95% of the guys still committed right now. I fully have it 100% going to Pitt. There'll be some guys that you have to watch on there. I think Isaiah Simmons out of Virginia, linebacker, number 1 linebacker in the state of Virginia, will be a guy to watch. Certainly people are still really recruiting him hard. There'll be a number of different players that we're going to go through and get a lot more offers. I think some of their the lighter guys in terms of the offer sheets, you're going to continue to watch these guys get a lot more offers. Pitt, again, has an article come out today, talks about how Pitt is the top school in terms of beating the recruiting rankings and developing talent and sending it off to the NFL. I had a number of players reach out to me that Pitt is actually looking at. I won't disclose those names because of personal and direct conversations I've had with them, but they have talked about that. They've talked about how Pitt has really talked about how they develop talent. They develop it from the bottom up when they come in as freshmen, not just on the football field, but in the weight room. The Pitt Ironworks, they've done an incredible job of what they do there. Coach Stacchiotti does a tremendous job, and I think he continues to do a great job, and really players are taking notice, but especially out of the state of Texas. I've had a number of people reach out to me, players that I've reached out to personally as well, that talked about how Pitt's facilities are second to none when you come across the country, and basically the cat's out of the bag when it comes to recruiting players in the Texas area. So we'll continue to watch that. I think Dejon Moore, again, I thought he could potentially be a great offensive lineman down the road when you look at a team like Maryland or even Pitt. Good for him. I mean, at the end of the day, probably got a little bit more money when he goes to Maryland. We'll continue to watch what that looks like down the road in terms of Maryland's head coaching stability. If they continue to go through another losing season, Mike Loxley, I think, has the opportunity to get fired there. We'll continue to watch Dejon Moore potentially go into the portal when that time comes. Again, I think it's really important for a school like Pitt to make sure they recruit at a certain level. They get certain players that fit their system. I think that stuff really does matter. But the way that the college football is going with the transfer portal, a lot of these times where you're not in the top 10 or top 20 in terms of recruiting really isn't that big of a deal because you're hitting the transfer portal with 5, 10, 15 plus players. Obviously, you don't want to be doing what West Virginia's doing. They get a new head football coach, which understands why. Rich Rodriguez comes back. They've got 73 new players on their roster. They're certainly going through a bunch of turmoil down there. In terms of players that are coming in and out, they've got a lot of question marks just overall on their full roster because all the different players coming through there. And now they're potentially having Ren Baker, the WVU West Virginia AD, potentially being a target for Oklahoma. He's from the Oklahoma area. If he leaves West Virginia to go to Oklahoma, that's a major issue for them down the road. I think they need to do whatever they can to hold on to guys like that. So we'll watch and see what the situation looks like at West Virginia and West Virginia's athletic director, Ren Baker, when it comes to potentially leaving the Big 12 for the SEC. But I think, again, Pitt right now, still 20 commitments. They got plenty of other guys on the board. Offensive line, defensive line, cornerback. I think there's really the three positions they're looking at and potentially adding guys. I think they're good with the running back room. I think they're good there. The tight end room, they maybe add one more guy. Wyatt Villarreal, I think, is a great addition that they have there right now. Maybe adding one more tight end just to fill out that room because it's a little bit lighter in the tight end room. But it's already a great addition so far. Wyatt Villarreal, again, a big guy, 6'5". I think he could be a really good potential addition to the tight end room. So far, again, they lose a commitment. But number two, Big 12 Media Days step up here so far. And just to jump off into the realm of college athletics, the 5+11 model was really talked about recently between the Big 12 and the ACC. Personally, I'm a fan of the 5+11. I think that the automatic bids from numerous different conferences, you look at the SEC trying to get 4, the Big 12 trying to get 4, the Big 10 trying to get 4. I think it could be a potential issue down the road for conferences like the Big 12 and the ACC. The Big 10 is trying ruthlessly to get 4-4, getting that 4-4-2-2-1 model because they can get at least 4 teams in. I think the 5+11 model is more preferred by the SEC. They think they can get more teams in than just 4 or 5 teams because of their strength of schedule. I think it's a little bit more overly rated. I think there's some teams that just shouldn't not be in the college football playoff. Teams should really work their way into those leagues. I think still to this day, when you look across the board of the NCAA, the SEC, in my opinion, is still the best conference from top to bottom. I think obviously the Big 10 and the ACC are a lot closer at number 2. The Big 10 obviously having Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State. You have those 3 teams that are there. But the rest of that conference, you start to have question marks. Michigan took a step back. Indiana was able to step up, but we'll see if they can do back-to-back years where they're elusive. And the Big 10, with Kurt Signetti entering his second season there. But this year, without Tino Sinceri, he goes to UCLA. UCLA and USC has not been good ads. They've been really mediocre football teams there so far into the Big 10 and their tenure there. But we'll continue to monitor and watch it. Personally, I thought it was pretty crazy that the Big 12 is actually pushing for that 5+11 model, which I think at the end could potentially hurt them because of the football teams they have in that conference. It's just not as good, obviously, as the SEC, the Big 10, or the ACC. They lack that major player when it comes to a bigger brand. There are no massive brands in the Big 12. On Three was recently talking about it. The Cover 3 podcast with a bunch of those guys were talking about it. We know what the Big 12 is. A lot of the mid-tier football teams that are in that conference. There's really no major blue blood team in that conference. You're looking at potentially a conference where the conference championship has 2, 3, potentially even 4 losses going into the season. We'll watch and see what that conference looks like. But I think Clemson will certainly be in the ACC championship game again this year. I think they've really put together a good roster. I think they're one of the most talented teams. The most talented team in the ACC, in my opinion, is Miami. The question mark always comes around with Miami is can Miami put it together and get those guys to perform at a high level? When you're in Miami, there's a lot of things to do others besides playing football. Those guys can certainly get distracted. We've seen it in years past. Miami has really underachieved in its time period with the ACC, has not won a conference championship in over 15 years at this point, potentially even longer. I think it's a major issue for Miami. We'll see if they can take that next step with Mario Cristobal. Carson Beck comes in from Georgia, the quarterback transfer. We'll watch and see what they can do. Clemson's going to be another team to watch again. I think Louisville with Miller Moss, the quarterback transfer from USC, he's going to be a guy to watch this year. Jeff Brom, in my opinion, is one of the best offensive coordinators and offensive head coaches in college football. To me, I kind of consider him a quarterback guru. No matter who's in that quarterback room, he does a great job of developing that whole room. He certainly had Tyler Shuck in there last year. He did a good job. He goes off to the NFL. He's got Miller Moss in there. I think Miller Moss, while people at USC think he's not that good of a quarterback, I think that the situation at USC is just not as good. I think there's a lot more distractions. The way that team's run, obviously, I'm not a major fan of Lincoln Riley. I think he does a really bad job overall and has never had any good defenses there, which hurts their overall record because they can't hold anybody under 35 points. But overall, Jeff Brom, I think, is a tremendous football coach and really a quarterback guru. So I expect Louisville to be in a really good position this year to contend for an ACC title. Another team to watch, Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, obviously, really had a number of good games last year. They had, again, was it 3 or 4 losses last year? But I think with Haynes King back at quarterback, we'll continue to see how he continues to develop. I think he has to take his game to the next level for Georgia Tech to be a contender down the road. I think it's really important. But they've done a good job of recruiting there. They're certainly taking advantage more and more of the Georgia area. You would think Georgia Tech would be more focused on taking guys from Georgia, but they've had problems in the past. But with their new regime there, I think that they've done a hell of a job of really attacking that area. They're a good football team this year. I think they're certainly going to be fun to watch. Boston College, Billy O'Brien, I think he's still a couple years away for competing for an ACC title, but they're certainly working their way and doing a good job of developing talent and also recruiting. One team to watch this year for me is going to be Florida State. I don't think they're going to bounce back to the way people think they are. Tommy Castellanos, the Boston College transfer quarterback, he was benched at Boston College, hits the transfer portal, now he's down to Florida State. I do not think he's a good quarterback. I think he struggles for the majority of the time. He did not play well really in the middle of the year, towards the end of the year, did not take the benching well at Boston College. You saw in the most recent articles where he's talking about how, Alabama won't be able to stop Florida State in their non-conference game. They're starting off in the first game of the year for Florida State. I don't think that's going to go well for Florida State. I think they're going to get blown out. I think Tommy Castellanos, again, is not a great quarterback. I think he struggled mightily against a number of different teams last year. Boston College actually became a better team by benching Tommy Castellanos and putting in their backup. Boston College will now have a quarterback this year where he's transferring in from Alabama, a lot like what Pitt did last year. That'll certainly be a fun one to watch. Clemson always has a D-line. They just wreak havoc. They have a quarterback again. Seems they are getting back to old Clemson. I agree. They're getting back to who they truly are traditionally, which I think that they're a tough football team. I think Cade Klubnik took steps forward last year. We saw him make a number of great throws last year. I think that if you add a lot of pressure onto him, he certainly struggles when he drops back to pass and he's in the pocket. I think he's shown that he struggles when there's a lot of pressure. But if he has a little bit of time, he really makes a lot of damn good throws. I think Clemson will be a team to watch this year. But also, Dabo Swinney finally utilized the transfer portal. He fought that for a couple of years, which I totally get. I like how he has his culture. But I think to utilize the transfer portal is truly important if you want to be a national title contender. And I think Clemson has a legit shot for a national title again this year, getting back into the conversation like they were for the past 5 to 10 years, and the complete domination of the ACC. Let's see what else do we have here on the docket. Another one here. I'm actually going to share my screen. This is a pretty crazy one. The Athletic put out a top 25 of the biggest rivalries in college football, and the Backyard Brawl was not on there. Again, obviously, I'm a Pitt fan. You guys are Pitt fans. We have a lot of people tuning into the show from Big 10, Big 12, SEC country. I just don't understand how it's not on there. And we're going to share my screen with you guys here. Let's see here. Here is a list of the top 25, which, again, there's a number of these ones that are on here that you just scratch your head at. Get a little closer here. Michigan, Ohio State, I totally understand. Number one, I think it's one of the greatest rivalries there is. The obviously Alabama and Auburn, a great rivalry right there. Oklahoma and Texas, the Red River rivalry. Army, Navy, always there. USC and Notre Dame, I'm not really one to watch that. I think it's a great game overall. Lincoln Riley certainly running away from Notre Dame. Notre Dame has taken another step in terms of trying to be a consistent winner. This is the first year. Last year was the first year really in 20-plus years that they won a New Year's Six bowl game. Every time Notre Dame's gotten to that point where they start to take on good teams in the bowl game, they always lose. Well, last year was that first year they really took that step forward. I think Marcus Freeman's a hell of a football coach, and we'll continue to see if we can get Notre Dame to be consistently one of the powers in college football. But again, Notre Dame, I get that in there. USC, just the way they've been playing, I just don't understand it. I don't think it's a top 5 one. Oklahoma, Nebraska, I don't see that in the top 10. Florida State and Miami, I get that one there. The biggest question you'll see in the comments section is this one right here, Ohio State versus Penn State. This is not a rivalry, okay? The rivalry for Ohio State is Michigan and Michigan only. It's not even close to Michigan and Ohio State. It's not a rivalry. They're in the same conference. I mean, people bash Penn State for the stupid slogan they have, unrivaled, which is so stupid. Obviously it doesn't help that Penn State against Ohio State under James Franklin is 1-11. I mean, Ohio State just beats the brakes off of Penn State every single year. Ohio State just really owns Penn State to this point. The same thing goes for James Franklin. A losing record against Ohio State, Michigan State. I mean, that's pretty daunting. And now has a losing record against Oregon, lost to Oregon in the Big Ten title game. And I think it was one of the biggest things this year we talked about. Penn State backs its way into the Big Ten championship game. At least makes it somewhat competitive, but still can't win the big game. They still don't win it. They can't beat Ohio State, can't beat Oregon. It kind of gets to the point where, they're going to have eventually Michigan on the schedule again. Can they even beat Michigan? Those question marks are certainly there. I think this year with Penn State, the hype is certainly around them. I think personally, they probably do have the best running back combination in college football. They're certainly going to try to run the football as much as they possibly can. What's going to be the difference maker this year, Penn State always has a great defense. I think the conference helps them out in terms of the Big Ten because of the way their offenses are designed there. Heck, Iowa has gone to the Big Ten title because of just being able to run the football, but they only score a touchdown or two a game. It's nothing special there. But Penn State has the best running back duo in college football. I think there's still some questions up front. They like the guys they have returning up front. The question comes down to Drew Aller. I think Drew Aller, when he's facing, the mediocre teams of the Big 12, and the mediocre teams of the Big 10, which there are plenty of them, they're, average, below average to mediocre. He does really well in those games. But when it comes to Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, the guy's nowhere to be found. It does not play well, which leads to losses, which we've seen over the last how many years. And then you saw him against Notre Dame, played horrible against Notre Dame. Notre Dame, who was missing 5 starters on the defensive side of the football, and Notre Dame still comes out on top. That's going to be a question mark going into this year. If Penn State does not get to the national title game or even win a national title this year, they never will, because that's just a James Franklin staple. They can't get rid of him because he's getting 10, 11 wins a year. But when it comes to those big teams, those elite teams in college football, Penn State can't beat them. But there's no way in hell that this game is even a rivalry to begin with, let alone if they even put this game on here. No way in the world is it a top 10 game at all. Also in here, Minnesota and Wisconsin. No one gives a shit about Minnesota and Wisconsin. No idea why they're even on here. That's a stupid game to have there. Always like Florida and Florida State in there. That makes sense. Georgia, Florida in there. That makes sense. Alabama, LSU. USC and UCLA, never a game I really watched, but I mean, that's in there, but I would have that lower. Texas A&M. I like this game on here. That's a renewed rivalry. Michigan State. I agree with that on there. Auburn and Georgia. Michigan and Notre Dame. I don't know about Michigan and Notre Dame on there either. I think it should be a little bit lower. Kansas, Missouri, Harvard, Yale. I like that being on there as well. Washington and Oregon. Not really sure, if I'd have that on there. Iowa and Wisconsin. Not really sure I'd have that game on there as well. Preferably, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. I like that one on there. That's a great rivalry right there. Clemson, South Carolina, they play every year. Ole Miss, Mississippi State. But when I look at the backyard brawl, I'm shocked that it's not at least in the top 25 here. It should be in the top 25 100% because of the hatred, and both schools embrace the rivalry, which a lot of schools don't. Penn State's one of those teams where they run away from rivals and say they're unrivaled and really have no, meaningful games there. But at the end of the day, even Kansas and Missouri on here, I'm not sure how that's a rivalry that's on here. That doesn't make any sense either. But in my opinion, a top 10 rivalry in college football, the backyard brawl should be there for how hyped it is every single season. It averages over 3.5 million viewers at least a year. People love to watch it. There's certainly a lot of hatred, the closeness to them. Two states that love football. Obviously, Pennsylvania is notoriously, obviously, for football, much more than what West Virginia is. But the good thing about West Virginia is that's really the only thing that's in the state. There's nothing else to do in West Virginia. At the end of the day, whether West Virginia fans want to admit that or not, it's West Virginia. There's just nothing to do in that state. I mean, there's no professional sports. There's nothing even fun to do in that state. I mean, everything is revolved around the Mountaineers, which again, they talk certainly about. One of the things I truly don't understand is they talk a lot about the rivalry in attendance. Last time I checked, West Virginia only sells out against Penn State and Pitt. Last year, they were averaging only 50,000, which, at the end of the day, if you put 50,000 in Acrisure Stadium, there's 20,000 empty seats. And again, we've talked about that numerous different times. I expect that to change when Pitt eventually does their own stadium in 26 or 27, or that announcement comes out after Victory Heights is done. But at the end of the day, the backyard brawl should certainly be there. I mean, that is a rivalry that should always be in there, especially top 10. And this year, with Rich Rodriguez coming back, I think there's a potential for ESPN College Game Day to be there, with the game being on 9/13. Also, the backyard brawl, this is the last year, the backyard brawl till 2029. I don't expect it to come onto the schedule before then. West Virginia has their schedule packed. We have our schedule packed. We've got Wisconsin on the schedule. We've got Notre Dame on the schedule. We've got UCF on the schedule. West Virginia next year, they're going to be facing Alabama at Alabama. I mean, that's going to be, I think, an ass whooping overall. I think Alabama's going to just tear that game up. But, this is the last backyard brawl till 2029. In my opinion, depending upon if Rich Rodriguez can find a way to win, this may be the only backyard brawl he coaches. And the same thing goes to Pat Narduzzi. Pat Narduzzi, I think, in my opinion, will be retired before the next backyard brawl. So this could be the last backyard brawl for these two coaches. I think, Rich Rodriguez certainly has a major uphill battle for him and what he needs to do in making West Virginia competitive. Obviously, they've been very mediocre, under Neil Brown in the last really 2 to 3 years under Dana Holgerson. So they've gone through 9 years of just mediocrity. Obviously, Pitt has had its years of mediocrity 2 years ago, going 3-9. But in 2021 and 2022, they end the year in the top 25. They win the ACC in 2021. But Rich Rodriguez certainly has a major uphill battle. But again, Pat Narduzzi, this could potentially be, in my opinion, more than likely, Pat Narduzzi's last backyard brawl. So pretty crazy overall, but the list there, I think, is certainly just mediocre from top to bottom. I'm just absolutely shocked how the backyard brawl is not on this list as it should be. Check the comments section here. Nothing in there again. Okay, so good. Also, too, again, more people joining on here. Down below, make sure you hit the like button. If you're over on X or if you're over on Facebook, head over to YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and make sure you subscribe to the show. Also, the super chat button is down below if you want to ask a question and make a small donation to the pod. Let's see here. Stop sharing. There we go. So that topic's off the books. What else we got on here? Top 25, hit that. Oh, yeah, ACC Media Days. 2 weeks away, officially from today, 2 weeks away from ACC Media Days. Let me see if I can actually look up the preseason. Let me see how many wins each team's projected here. Yeah, as we go through it here, a number of different headlines when you look through each one of these teams. Obviously, Pitt, they don't have Pitt and even in the top 8 in terms of competing for the ACC title. I think that's a little bit far-fetched. I think with Eli Holstein returning, Desmond Reed, you look at the wide receiver room with Kenny Johnson returning. I think that's a major factor for Pitt moving forward. Also, continuity up front on the right side, at least. Ryan Bayer back to the right tackle position where he's really, I think, going to just blossom because that's the side that he's really been very much more proven, a lot more production at the right tackle position. Right guard, B.J. Williams returns, which is a very good thing. Held him off from the transfer portal. Lyndon Cooper, now in year 2 of this offense, back at center. That's a major addition. I expect a good competition between Keith Gavia and Jackson Brown for the left guard position. I think Jackson Brown will win that job. And then also at left tackle, Jeff Percy, the transfer from Michigan. He'll be in there. He'll be competing with Kendall Stanley. I think Jeff Percy will win that job. And Pitt will certainly have depth at the offensive line position. I think when you look at Pitt overall, I think people are really doubting them because you saw the 6-game slide. They're coming off a 6-game losing streak. So understandably why they're a little bit lower on this list. But with more guys returning, more depth, Pitt, again, has an opportunity to beat the odds from what's currently being out there right now. But headlines, again, Clemson returns a strong offense led by Cade Bell. Looking at some of my notes here, Cade Bell, national title contender. They're going to be one of the favorites, if not the favorite right now. Miami, looking for a playoff berth. I think if it was a 16-team playoff last year, Miami would have made the playoffs with Cam Ward, the number 1 overall draft pick in the draft. They replaced him with Carson Beck. Also, strong defense and production on the defensive side of the football returning. Miami always has really good defensive linemen, but also very good defensive backs. They've always been really good at developing the DB room up there. Also returning, SMU. SMU is certainly returning. Kevin Jennings, the quarterback from last year, who did a great job coming in after the 3rd game of the year, really just took off. And his career, I think, is going to be on another trajectory for this year. They're going to be a team that competes for an ACC title. Certainly going to be looking to replicate that success, but they have a more challenging schedule this year in the ACC with facing all the teams, more impactful teams on their schedule. Georgia Tech, a legitimate contender, returning a strong core, individual threats. Again, Haynes King, but remember, running back Jamal Haynes also returns this year. Had a really good season for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Again, a guy to watch in the ACC. Louisville, we've talked about them again. Jeff Brom, the head football coach there. Anytime you get Jeff Brom as a head football coach and running your offense, you've always got a really good shot there. And again, Miller Moss. And then they return 90% of the production on the defensive side of the football. So the defensive side expected to take that next step. And then Miller Moss just filling the shoes of Tyler Shuck. So we'll be able to watch him and see what he does. Florida State's also on here. I don't agree with Florida State being on here. We talked about, again, Tommy Castellanos. I don't think he's that good of a quarterback. Certainly got benched at Boston College. Boston College did a better job, had a better season, not just points-wise, but yards per attempt, yards per rush. Everything was working in really in fluency with the offense once Tommy Castellanos was benched. Now down at Florida State, his comments again about Alabama and then trying to run the ACC and run college football, I think, which is blatant stupidity on this end. I don't expect him to be in front of the media anytime soon because of the issues and the way he was handling the media. I think they would truly love to regret. I think Florida State truly regrets that and wishes he was never in front of the camera. Also, North Carolina. Why is North Carolina on here? Well, very simple. Head football coach, Bill Belichick, NFL legend, potential, again, future Hall of Famer, 7-time Super Bowl champion, going from the NFL to college football. brought in a lot of different people, brought in a great staff, in my opinion. I think he did a great job hiring a very good staff. North Carolina has certainly invested plenty of money in their coaching staff, and the same thing with their team. We'll see what they look like. I think they have a lot of different turnover, different guys going through there because of the portal. They had a number of guys go in, come out. I think the biggest thing for North Carolina is how does this new coaching staff really develop its football players? And I mean, whether you look at them at the NFL level, you look at a lot of the guys on that staff, they do a great job of developing talent, but can they do that at the college level? That's going to be the real question going forward with North Carolina. And then other contenders in here, Duke, Manny Diaz down there. We'll see what he can do in another year. They brought in Mensa from Tulane, the quarterback transfer, who was just tremendous at Tulane. He'll be a guy to watch this year. It's going to be a fun game, really a fun overall team to watch in the ACC. Virginia Tech's on here every year. They bring back, again, their quarterback. I just don't know with Brent Pry. I think Brent Pry's on the hot seat this year. I don't know what to really expect out of them. I don't expect them to win more than 8 games, to be quite honest with you. I think they're going to have a decision to make down there. Brent Pry's their guy. I think he's going to continue to struggle this year. And Virginia Tech potentially back in the market for another head football coach. NC State's on here. I think they're going to struggle again this year. Did not add a lot of great players through the portal. A lot more questions again at quarterback. They had Grayson McCall last year, who went through plenty of different injuries at quarterback from Coastal Carolina. That's going to be a team to watch. But again, they're on the schedule for Pitt. That should be a win for Pitt. I don't think they added enough talent through the portal, and they certainly have a lot of questions on both sides, not just the offensive line on the offensive side, but the defensive line as well, which is pretty crazy to think about. NC State has been known for their defensive lines. Also, they lost Tony Gibson. Tony Gibson, the defensive coordinator, who has been running a tremendous defense at NC State, took the head football coaching job for the Marshall Thundering Herd. He's now back in the state of West Virginia, home in the state of West Virginia, and he'll be taking care of the Marshall Thundering Herd. So it'll be another one to watch. Let's see what we have on here. I got some other teams. Who am I missing out here? Yeah, also at the bottom, I don't expect Cal to make a serious jump. They lost a number of guys throughout the portal. I think they're still building that roster. Ron Rivera, former head football coach of the Washington football team, is now with the how do I want to say that? He was with the Carolina Panthers, the Washington Redskins, the Washington football team. They're now all with them. He retired from the NFL, really was now the GM of the Cal University football team. We'll watch and see what he does. Mike Wilcox is there. He's certainly on the hot seat. We'll continue to watch and see what that whole entire debacle looks like. They now have 2 co-athletic directors, a very different type of setup in their athletic department. We'll see if it pays off. But again, they got some talent there. They got some talent on their football team. Are they going to compete for an ACC title? I don't expect so. Virginia, another football team on here. Tony Elliott, what's he going to be able to do this year? Again, last year he finishes the season 5-7, 3-5 in the conference. I don't expect Virginia to compete this year for an ACC title. I think they're still missing a lot of pieces. There are going to be question marks around Tony Elliott. Should he still be the head football coach there, as he's on the hot seat? Wake Forest 4-8, 2-6 in conference. Dave Clawson, as a lot of Pitt fans know him, was obviously the head football coach at Wake Forest. Was the head football coach at Wake Forest in 2021 when the Pitt Panthers beat the living breaks off Wake Forest and in Charlotte for the ACC title. He retires, a great football coach. Did at the end of the day, did a great job developing talent down there. He retires, could not put up with NIL. I think there's a lot of head football coaches like that. You're going to be seeing more and more of them go out through the system. But Jeff Dickert comes in from Washington State, takes over the job at Wake Forest. We'll continue to see how he builds that team. I think they're still a far ways away for building that team. He's a great offensive head football coach. I think give him 2, 3, 4 years, he'll be able to put some roster and some fluctuation together there, but certainly a far ways away. Stanford, they had Jeff Traylor up there. He gets fired for the whole debacle up there. Andrew Luck's their general manager. They bring in Frank Reich, the fired head football coach of the Carolina Panthers, from the National Football League. He comes down from the NFL, now down into Stanford in the ACC. The ACC having now 3 former NFL head football coaches. Bill O'Brien at Boston College, Frank Reich at here at Stanford, and then Bill Belichick down at North Carolina. I think with that whole system there, they still need to build out that roster. They lost some guys to the transfer portal. Frank Reich coming into college football is certainly going to be different. They certainly do have a Pitt man as the offensive coordinator. Nate Bynum is going to be the offensive coordinator and tight ends coach this year. He was a tight ends coach last year. Was of Albany, coached under Greg Gattuso at Albany for a number of different years. A great Pitt man. I think if a job ever really opened up for a Pitt job or anything like that, he would certainly be involved in those conversations. But he's out at Stanford, living in the great weather out there. He's going to have his first crack as a Power 4 offensive coordinator and run his system. So that'll be a really good opportunity to watch. But I still think they're far ways away. And I think that's all the teams, if I'm not mistaken. I think and Syracuse. Sorry, I forgot I had another team on here. Syracuse last year, first year of Fran Brown, who I think is one of the best coaches in the ACC, not just because of his actual games and his game preparation, but also his recruiting. Was able to land the first 5-star recruit at Syracuse in over 20 years in his recruiting. For the 2026 class, he certainly brought a number of 4-star recruits in previous years. Did not obviously fare well against the Pitt Panthers at Acrisure Stadium as Pitt just dominated Syracuse. At Acrisure Stadium, Pitt goes to Syracuse in the Dome in Syracuse, New York this year. We'll watch that game. That'll certainly be a tough game again. Syracuse finished 10-3, 5-3 in the ACC, but a 10-win season in the first year at Syracuse for Fran Brown. People want to talk about the schedule and whatnot. Still 10-3. I mean, he did a great job in the bowl game as well, beating a Power 4 team in the bowl game. I believe it was TCU out of the Big 12 they beat. Just a tremendous first year. I mean, just a lot of momentum going on at Syracuse. I think the real question mark that really sits around Syracuse at this point is their approach to NIL. I know they've really pushed away a number of big donors when it comes to potentially bringing in new foundations and new business development to Syracuse. Also, another pick connection to Syracuse, Heather Lyke is in a high-ranking position in the athletic department for Syracuse. She's certainly been known, again, like here at Pitt, with a lot of development with facilities, but obviously not a huge fan and not a fan at all of NIL. So I think she certainly fits the mold of what Syracuse is looking to do with facilities and not so much NIL. But Fran Brown is a hell of a football coach. Again, did a tremendous job as a position coach, a defensive backs coach at Georgia. Comes up to Syracuse. Tremendous first year, 10-3. I consider them to be a really good football team moving forward because of the guys they bring into the portal, but also how they recruit. And he's done a hell of a job. He's put together a great staff. Elijah Robinson, defensive coordinator, came in from Texas A&M. When he first took the job, he's done a hell of a job of really recruiting the defensive side of the football, developing the defensive side of the football, and schematically, he does a hell of a job. So I think it's been a really good job at Syracuse, just really are surrounding Fran Brown with some damn good football coaches. I expect Syracuse to be a damn good football team as the ACC and the years roll on. Let's see here. Got some comments coming here. Again, guys, down below, as we see the comments all coming in here. Again, if you want to get your question up on here and make sure it is read here tonight, because I can't get to every one of these comments, make sure the super chat button is down below. Make a small donation to the pod and get it up on the screen. What player will represent Pitt at ACC Media Day? WRW Pitt. That's a great question. I would imagine this year, because it is his second year at the University of Pittsburgh, I expect Eli Holstein, the quarterback and projected starting quarterback for Pitt, to head down to ACC Media Days. I bet you if we're going to put it down here, it's actually a great question, WRW Pick. This is actually a great prediction because it's 2 weeks away. I'm going to say we're going to go Eli Holstein. Number 2, we're going to go Desmond Reed. Ooh, this third one. I'm going to go Desmond Reed, and then I'm going to have 2 more on here. I think they maybe take 4. They always take 3. I'm going to say Kenny Johnson. And then the fourth one, my almost like my honor roll, one more projected one. I'm going to go offensive tackle Ryan Bayer. So check back with us in a week because the ACC Media Days are 2 weeks away. We should probably know next week. But my top 3, Eli Holstein, Desmond Reed, Kenny Johnson. But maybe even a potential one on there like Kyle Lewis. Kyle Lewis is one to watch too. Actually, then I'm going to say this: Eli Holstein, Desmond Reed, and who did I just say? Kyle Lewis. That's going to be my prediction. Eli Holstein, Desmond Reed, and Kyle Lewis. Those are my three. So 1, 2, 3. All right, we'll check back in a week. We'll see if I'm right. Those are my three projections. And then I'd say the number 4 guy I still have is Ryan Bayer. And then we'll say number 5 will be Kenny Johnson because they've got already 2 guys on offense. He usually takes at least 1 defensive player. So I'll say those guys. Hail Razor Nation. Hail to Pitt. Appreciate it as always. 45 minutes in, guys. Again, make sure if you're over on X or Facebook, head over to YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe, and make sure you subscribe to the channel. We have 216 people watching the show right now. Make sure, guys, you do a great job. I cannot thank you guys always for the support of the show. If you want to get your question read here tonight, super chat button down below to make sure it is read. We'll go through a number of these, but I can't always reach all of them. I think a lot of people sleep on the ACC conference. Every team is competitive except Wake Forest. I agree. I think people, the bad rap, because obviously the ESPN is very involved with both the SEC and the ACC, but they pay a lot more money to the SEC, so they got to promote them. I'd say for the most part, though, I don't know if it's just Wake. I would put in there, Florida State would be in there for me. Wake Forest would be in there for me. I'll say Virginia. NC State. But after that, everybody else. And then, Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech last year, 6-7, 4-4. I think that's a team that, doesn't really compete very well. It hasn't shown it yet. So I think it's a team to watch. But I would say every other team in there is competing. Heck, Pitt was 7-0 last year. Again, the injuries up front, all the offensive linemen was critical. Eli Holstein getting hurt was critical. Desmond Reed getting hurt was critical. Konate Mumfield getting hurt was critical. Does that adjust? Does that mean it's okay for Pitt to lose 6 straight games? No, because I should have won at least a couple of games in there. Bad coaching gets involved in that. And I think it was not just, Pat Narduzzi, but Cade Bell did a lot of mistakes in there, especially in the bowl game. So all around, I expect this football team to take that next step and really show itself this year and take that next step. Bill O'Brien up at Boston College. Ralph, I agree. I think Bill O'Brien, he continues to build a really good roster up there. I think they're going to be competitive. I mean, give him a couple more years, he's going to do a hell of a job. Good night. I have a question for you. Is Desmond Reed small or he just short? You have seen him, Edwin. He's a short guy. Desmond Reed. What is he, like 5'8", 5'7", 5'8"? Certainly not big in stature. But again, the guy's an All-American. He certainly proved himself last year to be a major asset to this Pitt football team. When you're an All-American, you're a damn good football player, no matter how big you are. The question that I really have at this point is they need to do a better job of getting that number 2 guy. And I think that's going to be Joel Goff this year. They need to have a guy rotating in with him because he's just, with his size, he cannot stay healthy. You can't have that guy carry the ball 20 to 25 times a game plus catch the ball out of the backfield 15 times. You just can't do it. His body's not made for that. He's not big enough. He's not a guy who can take that many, that much punishment as we've seen last year for how many times he was injured. So we need to see him get the most important touches when he's on the football field. But we need that guy that rotates in with him and to create that good matchup. Joel Goff, Derek Davis Jr. could be one of those guys. But also watch out for this true freshman, Jakarian Boozy Turner, who I think is going to get a lot of playing time this year as well. Does Alan Green and Doug Whaley have the guts to fire Narduzzi? I can tell you this: Doug Whaley has nothing to do with this conversation. Doug Whaley works for Alliance 412. Alliance 412 has nothing to do with personnel decisions. That Alan Green and the Narduzzi stuff will come down to Joan Gable and Alan Green. And I can tell you this: if Pat Narduzzi goes 7-6 again, or 6-6, or 7-5. I mean, there's going to be a conversation, and whether it's retirement or he gets let go, there'll be certainly conversations about it. And I think Alan Green is going to be a guy that watches that, very intently as he wants to win at the University of Pittsburgh. He's made that very clear. And I think these next 5 years are so important for Pitt that the pressure's on, and I've said it, multiple times on this show as well. There is no reason this year down in Morgantown that Pitt should lose that game. They have major dysfunction up front on their offensive line, all new offensive linemen, not just on their starting offensive line, but they're too deep, both on the too deep. The only returning offensive lineman is Livingston, who played center. I expect him to be the starter this year at center position, but he's played 70 snaps overall in his career. That's it. I think maybe 70 or maybe 48 snaps. Might have been 48 snaps from what I heard. But they have a lot of major issues up front. The offensive line looks to be an issue. Their defensive line looks to be an issue. There's their wide receiver step up. There's a lot of group of 5 FCS guys they have brought in. They've got a couple D2 running backs that are currently back there. Jaheim White, in my opinion, is the guy to stop on that offense. Jaheim White will be the best player on the offensive side of the football for West Virginia. I think Nico Marchio will win the starting job. He'll certainly have a competition with the transfer quarterback from Texas A&M that they brought in. But that's a whole new team, 73 plus new players on a football team. You know, Deion Sanders, who I think brought in a great staff at Colorado, did that same exact thing also in the Big 12, went 4-8 in his first year. I'm sorry, in the Pac, it was in the Pac-12 first, but 4-8 in its first year. That just can't, you know, it's just so much turnover. You're trying to build a culture. You're trying to find out which guys are able to be on board there. And also, Pitt faces them in week 3. There is no reason for Pitt to lose that game. Every year, I'm usually 50-50 because the game's always close. And I expect it almost to be close this year, you know. But the biggest thing for me moving forward in this year is that Pitt has so much more continuity. The second year of a Cade Bell offense, your quarterback returns. Eli Holstein now back healthy. Your offensive line receives upgrades at the offensive line position with Jeff Percy, Kendall Stanley, Jackson Brown looking to move into that position at left guard. Ryan Bayer moving back from left tackle to right tackle, which is a major aspect because he's much better at the right tackle position. You bring back Lyndon Cooper. You bring back B.J. Williams, guys that are much more ready for this second year of this offense. Desmond Reed returns. You know, Kenny Johnson returns. And you add in a guy like Deuce Spann at 6'5" out of Florida State. You add in Kateris Blue Hicks, great speed out of Louisville, the Louisville transfer. He's there. You know, you have Bryce Yates, a true freshman, coming in at the wide receiver position. Zion Fowler-L at the wide receiver position. You've got a number of guys. C.J. Lee back healthy. Raphael Poppy Williams back healthy. There's just no reason for Pitt. And then on defense, you've got an All-American with Kyle Lewis playing linebacker. Braylon Lovelace back. You've got Rasheem Biles, who I expect, again, I put out a tweet recently, the other day. I expect him to be an All-American this year. Back behind them, Cameron Lindsay, the former 4-star linebacker out of Aliquippa. He's going to be a major factor this year. Jeremiah Marcelin, their linebacker crew set. You look at the DB room, Rashawn Murray, All-American at the D2 level, but a guy that's 6'2", just fits the mold of what Narduzzi looks for a corner. A guy 6'2", big, length, can play at that level. Shadarian Harrison, a guy you guys have to watch out for this year. I think he's going to have a tremendous year, has the size, ability, understands the defense, will be a major, major asset this year. Rashawn Murray, Shadarian Harrison, Rashad Battles back, Taman Lynham, you know, really your top 4 cornerbacks that you'll have there in that room. At the safety position, Javon McIntyre returns, Cruz Brookins returns. I think those will be your 2 starters there. Jaden Bonsu is going between safety and linebacker. I think Jaden Bonsu can be that 6th guy at the linebacker position or more depth at safety. Jesse Anderson also returns to the safety position. You also got Kazir Baines. Kazir Baines can play safety or cornerback. You know, I think he'll probably play the safety position. Just there's so much, you know, depth on the defense side of the football. And then up front, I think the question mark that we all reside, and personally me, myself, is the defensive end position. Jimmy Scott will be your starter on one side, and Jaden Moore. And those are 2 guys that I know they're going to be damn good at the defensive end position. Besides that, these guys got to prove themselves. So we'll watch and see. But there's so much more to prove there up front. I mean, you know, the defensive tackle position, I love. I think the defensive tackle position is stacked for Pitt this year. Sean Fitzsimmons and Nick James will start at the 2 defensive tackle positions. Behind them, Francis Breu, Jasir Whittington. Behind him, Isaiah O'Neal. And then also back there is Ty Uhas. You've got 6 guys that can play the defensive tackle position. You know, the only question marks that I have besides that the 2 starters at defensive end is the depth behind them. That's it. The defense should be head and shoulders 10 times better than what it was last year and much more consistent and should be able to dominate that game in Morgantown. The same thing with the offense. If they don't win this year, I can promise you I will be on here very much calling for Narduzzi's job because that's just unacceptable. Where those 2 programs are right now, there's 0 reason for Pitt to lose. Zero. And I can say that right now. If they lose, come hell or high water, there's going to be some issues. Repost this stream. Thank you as always. Vegas over under for Pitt at 6.5. What are you taking and why? So obviously I have the over. Pitt has done a great job on an Narduzzi, always getting the over. I'd say out of the 10 years Narduzzi's been here, this will be his 11th year at Pitt. Out of the 10 years, they have overachieved and beaten those totals 8 out of 10 years. The 2 years they didn't were the 5-7 season, and the one before that was a 3-9 season. That was it. Every year he's over on the spread. Right now, I'm still stuck between 8-4 and 9-3. And I think that if they really stay healthy, I think 9-3 potentially, and an opportunity to play. I don't know if they'll win it, but I think they have an opportunity to play in the ACC championship game. That's my opinion. Syracuse did better than Pitt. Yeah, last year was 10-3. They did better, and which was a really good job on them. Fran Brown does a great job. We'll see what he does in year 2. Schedule's going to be a lot tougher, but hey, 10 wins in your first year is certainly really, really good. Kyle Lewis for sure going down to ACC Media Days. I agree. I think it's going to be my 3. It's going to be Eli Holstein, Desmond Reed, and Kyle Lewis. I think there's going to be my 3. There's a 4th. I think I'm going to go with Ryan Bayer. Let's see here. More questions coming in. They normally have one defensive player go. I was told Doug Whaley's the Pitt GM. I mean, but he's not but Ralph, he's not an in-house GM. I mean, Pat Narduzzi says that because Doug Whaley works for Alliance 412. Doug Whaley doesn't work for the University of Pittsburgh. It's 2 completely different worlds. While, it's great. I agree. Doug Whaley right now is the in-name general manager. He does handle all that stuff, and he does a great job with Pitt. He does a great job from top to bottom. But I've been very vocal about it. Pitt needs to hire, whether it's Doug Whaley or somebody else, as an in-house GM. Because right now, Pitt does not have an in-house GM, and that needs to change because as every other team around the country is hiring GMs in-house. That has to happen, and I think it needs to happen quickly. Rich Rod needs an athletic quarterback to run his offense. I don't think either one of the I don't think that's one on the roster this year. I think I think athletically, Nico Markiel is not like that next level where he can run a ton. I think he's going to be elusive in the pocket, but he certainly is not a running guy. The Texas A&M quarterback they brought in, he is a dual threat quarterback, but it's whether he can learn this offense in time and be very productive. I just think that for how many players they've brought in, how many guys left in the spring portal, how many guys they've brought in to this summer haven't even played a practice yet. I think there's a lot of issues coming to Morgantown, and I think that there's no reason why Pitt should lose that game. None. Pitt should win that football game. And if they don't, it's going to come hell or high water on this show. I can tell you that. I'm going to be in their ass like you wouldn't believe. There's no reason this year to lose to West Virginia. And, the way that they're talking, and again, Rich Rod has always been a talker. It doesn't matter if they're good or they're bad. It doesn't matter. He's talked a lot since he's been back. This is going to be their Super Bowl again this year. Usually Penn State and Pitt are their Super Bowls. They obviously played Pitt more often. That is the biggest game on their schedule. He's going to be geared up for that football game, game 3. We'll see some surprises. Defensive coordinator Zach Alley comes in from Oklahoma. I think he's a really good defensive coordinator, to be quite honest. He's a great defensive coach. But to have 2 games to warm up, which is, for them, it's going to be Ohio in game 2. And then who's game 1? I want to say it's Robert Morris in game 1. They really faced nobody in those first 2 games. And when you're trying to get prepared for the backyard brawl, it's much different for Pitt with guys that have already been there, where West Virginia has to try to find out who's really good and who's not, and really adjust. A number of these guys that West Virginia has brought in is from the group of 5 of the FCS level. They gotta be able to jump up to the Power 4 level and see if they can actually play at this level. So again, Pitt's got to win that game. And I'm very defiant on that. There's no reason for them to lose that game. None. All right, let's see here. I don't see any more questions on here. Guys, we're hitting the 59-minute mark. We're hitting up on an hour already. I don't see any more questions. If you have a super chat, drop it down below to hit it very quickly. Guys, we hit a number of different topics today. Let's see here. Oh, lastly, the one topic I wanted to hit on. When it comes to the atmosphere, obviously premium seating, Pitt released a very good thing recently about premium seating, which is going to help raise a ton of money. Every school is trying to find premium seating in their stadium. So obviously Pitt does not have that issue with playing at Acrisure Stadium, plenty of premium seating, but also in the tunnel, on field access, they're going to raise millions of dollars through that because there's a lot of people that want to get involved in that. Big money donors will certainly be involved in that. But the Acrisure Stadium atmosphere, I really don't think it's that bad. Obviously, we still need more fans there. I mean, at the end of the day, we're never going to have 70,000 fans unless, West Virginia or Penn State or Notre Dame's in the stadium. Pitt's honeymoon, where they're really at when Pitt's winning, they're really between 54 to 60,000 fans. And I think that's where, you look around the country, Oregon, their stadium capacity is 54,000. Utah is 51,000. TCU is 45,000. North Carolina is 50,000. Stanford is 50,000. I think that's just a good honeymoon where, eventually when that time comes for a stadium or anything, Pitt should be really between 45 to 50,000 for a new stadium, and then has the premium seating options there. But, the question was asked about the Acrisure Stadium. The one thing that just kills me is it seems like it's a major issue on the visiting side. The fans that don't like to stand up on the visiting side, it kills me because, why it's like that, I have no idea why. You are at a college football game. If you don't want people standing up and cheering, then you should not be at the game. Okay. Also, this year, if Pitt gets off to a hot start, which I expect to be, 3-0, potentially, 3-0 going into the Louisville game after the bye week and potentially 4-0, there's no reason why Pitt shouldn't have 50+ thousand, between 50 to 57,000 fans there consistently. I mean, that's pretty fair overall, and why, and potentially even more because you're growing the fan base. I think personally, the Panther Pit has turned it on. I remember growing up as a kid, the Panther Pit was horrible. These last really 6-7 years, the Panther Pit has been phenomenal. They've had 10 or 11,000 fans there and students there, where it's overflow even to the upper deck. I think they've done a tremendous job. I think this year, the overall atmosphere at Acrisure, it's a lot louder, especially when you hear the announcers on TV talk about it, even when there's only 50 to 55,000 people there, even less than that sometimes. But overall, the atmosphere needs to be better, and people need to stand up and actually cheer for the football team. Pitt, hail to Pitt. I'm really high on Pitt season. Been talking them up highly to my buddies. Really hope they can back it up and have a real decent squad this season. Again, Pitt fan H2P, they need to prove it on the field. They have the talent that's there, everything that's there. And it's not just the players. It's also the coaches. Pat Narduzzi needs to be a better head football coach this year. Randy Bates needs to be a better defensive coordinator this year. Cade Bell needs to make the adjustments and prove again that he is that guy that can really elevate and perform at a high level in the Power Four. He did a lot of good things last year. He did a lot of dumb things last year. He needs to develop and be able to make those adjustments where we don't run into an issue where you hit Cal and you're struggling on offense, or you hit Syracuse and you're having a little bit of issues on offense. You've now coached at the Power Four level for a year. You're seeing how they're adapting to your offense and how you run it. It's time for Cade Bell in year 2 to show progression. He needs to show he can coach and be very aggressive, but also productive in every game this year, unlike last year. Obviously, injuries were a major part last year. When you have quarterbacks running through there, 3 or 4 different quarterbacks, that can kind of adjust things as well. So he gets a break for that as well. But like any other coach, when they're getting up to this level, you got to be able to prove it. You got to show each and every year you're getting better and you're progressing. I think it's a major factor moving forward. And one thing I'm really going to be very much watching with Cade Bell, how does he progress? And are we averaging 35+ points a game? And also with continuity and guys staying healthy, are we up tempo the whole game like we should be under this Cade Bell offense? That's going to be another thing. Great question. All right, guys. I don't see any super chats coming in right now. We are at the hour and 3-minute mark. Potentially, we're going to try to bring in another special guest for next week. Obviously, with this moving on to a Tuesday, we weren't able to get any guests here so far. We will look to bring on another guest, potentially even bringing back Carlo. If he's not busy again next Sunday, we'll potentially bring him back. Maybe even bring Carlo and Harry on for the Sunday conversation next week, as we will be technically a week away from ACC Media Days. Will Z, here, question coming in here. How do you improve the Acrisure fan experience? Number one, I mean, just at the end of the day, the stadium's just too big. The stadium is just too big as it is, 70,000 seats. But I think overall, when it comes to the stadium experience, Pitt's lucky to have really the NFL amenities, where, again, you have individual seating, all that stuff's good. I just think that the fans need to get more into it. I think One Thunderstruck needs to come on. Again, I've said it a million times. I'm not a fan of Sweet Caroline. I absolutely think it's an overused song. I think it's just an absolutely just horrific song to play because it's been used so much. When that song comes on, I really think of the Boston Red Sox. That's just what I think about. But when it comes to improving game day experience, I mean, I just think that we need more people to show up. It's that simple. When we're winning, I can tell you this: when we're winning, and we have 60,000+, when we like when we had West Virginia, Clemson, even when Cal was here, I thought the atmosphere was really, really good. I think the Panther Pit does a great job, but I think some of the fans, especially on the away side, from the amount of people that have DM'd me about it, when fans are standing up and cheering for their team, no offense. I mean, why in God's name a fan would be upset that another person in front of them or something is standing? Like, get up. It's a college football game. A lot of high energy, what the hell? I mean, you should be cheering ruthlessly for your team. Doesn't matter where you are. But when it comes to adding more and more, experience or more game day experience or fan experience, it's a little above my pay grade. I have to really sit down and really think about it. I'd maybe bring you guys something next week, so we'll certainly talk about it. Awesome stream. Tuning in from work. Thank you. Obviously, tuning in from work. Thank you so much for being dedicated. The show is what it is because of you guys. And again, talking Pitt football and college football has been truly incredible, and it certainly is a lot of fun. Again, guys, if you're over on X, head over to YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. It certainly helps out with the algorithm. When this video is posted, guys, go to the comment section after this stream ends. Go to the comment section and let me know what you want to see next week. Who potentially do you want to bring on as a guest? Bring that on as well. Answer those in there. So what did you like about the video? Who do you think Pitt's going to do well this year? Who do you want on as a guest? And what more do you want to see on this channel? Those will be the questions I want you to answer in the chat, in the comment section when this is posted and this stream ends. Guys, as always and forever, cannot thank you guys enough and appreciate everything you do for the channel. This has been another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Guys, as always and forever, hail to Pitt and hail to the ACC. I'll see you next time.